Okay, welcome to another episode of Political Animals. I'm Mustafa Janadu in Washington, D.C. I'm the cynical one, and Kunle Williams is in Lagos, Nigeria. The hopeful one, maybe he's a little bit more hopeful if this ceasefire is legit. So I'll start off with that. What are your thoughts on the ceasefire that Trump has said took into effect late yesterday or early this morning, actually, or Tuesday? Do you think it's going to hold? Do you think it's a ploy? Or do you think we can be ambiguous about it, that it might be something positive, but we need to be more cautious? What do you think? We need to be cautious, even though it might be a positive trend or positive outcome.
It says a lot more. A lot more is said about it than isn't said. Trump has managed to appease both the hawks and the isolationists, and he's also managed to appease Netanyahu. And he's also managed to appease Iran with except that Iran now are in a position to get nuclear weapons. This entire event has simply forced Iran into getting nuclear weapons to put an end to the nonsense. Had they not done this, I think Iran would still be part of the IAEA. They'll still be part of the non-proliferation agreements. And they'll still be telling the world they were not building a nuclear weapon, and they'll still be letting inspectors in. However, because of the events of the last couple of weeks, that's all off. Iran is going to get a nuclear weapon. Their base hasn't been destroyed. They look bad. Israel has done this in the middle of a genocide. America has been seen to be aiding and abetting. Their troops have been endangered in attacks, have been made to look vulnerable. So if you look at the all in all, Iran didn't really win because its infrastructure was damaged, but it has been forced to get nuclear weapons. So America has basically failed in what it was trying to do, has backfired.
Yeah, but the Americans claim they destroyed their nuclear capability.
You see, and I think that Israel's priority wasn't really the nuclear capability. Israel's priority is toppling Iran. The problem they have now, yes, and the problem they have now is that if once Iran gets nuclear weapons, you can't topple them anymore. That's the end. And this was their chance. This was, if you think about it from an Israeli point of view, this was their best chance. U.S. military has been becoming increasingly less effective over the years as new cheap technology is able to overweigh the expensive technology. You have billions of dollars in aircraft carriers but then you have drones worth hundreds of dollars that can do jobs of planes that cost millions and also involve humans. So the style of warfare has changed. Again, just like World War I and World War II. World War I was all barbed wire, and World War II, immediately tanks made World War I tactics obsolete. And that's what's going on here. Conventional weapons as moving from man-operated equipment to drone-operated equipment. So now when you're attacking the enemy, you have to attack where those operators are. You have to attack the equipment. Simply, killing people in the air doesn't really work anymore. All the training, all those things that they've done over the years. Sort of like learning how to ride a horse with skill, and suddenly you got cars, so your skill in riding a horse is obsolete. That's what's going on with the nature of warfare.
And the advantage is that Iran, China, and Russia, all three of them excel in technology now and in mathematics and in sciences, whereas the U.S. is going backwards in technology and in education and everything. So that the U.S. is not going to have the population that can innovate and stay ahead of the game in terms of this type of warfare. We've all seen with Russia is the best nation in the world when it comes to electronic warfare, scrambling signals and things like that. Iran, Russia, and China are the only countries that actually have active hypersonic missiles. The U.S. is working on it, but they can't. So we're seeing the U.S. as declining. So I guess the point I'm making is that BRICS has the economy to now do this innovative, less expensive style of war because they've taken care of, first of all, they've taken care of the feeding of their citizens and trade and everything, whereas America has an inflation problem. And for America to keep up with them in war, they can't afford to do that because internally the country is falling apart because of domestic economics. So I guess what I'm saying is that the BRICS nations have better domestic economic programs than America, and they've come together to cut the dependency of the dollar. The dollar has reduced. Now the BRICS countries combined make up more than 50% of the world's GDP. So they have the manufacturing and the technological and the infrastructure base to thrive in this new style of war, whereas U.S. and Europe and the West are now fragmented, suffering internally, and have economic problems due to corruption. Last thing, even the money they do spend on their military, they don't spend it on their military. It goes into CEOs' pockets. So even the money that they spend on military, which is trillions of dollars, is not being used effectively. So to cut it short, what we're seeing now is it looks like Iran might be able to get away with building a nuclear weapon. I think that's a good thing for the world because Iran and Israel now having nuclear weapons in that area is a stalemate. Neither side, neither the West nor the Eurasia or BRICS can aggress each other but it was off balance until Iran gets a nuclear weapon. But it remains to be seen if they will. What do you think?
I think that they need to get a nuclear weapon. That will actually bring stability to the Middle East because then Israel would no longer be able to have any intentions there. The Western hegemonist empire is coming to an end because it's showing that it has an inability to provide basic justice to the common man. It's not unique to this particular empire. All empires fail once they cannot bring either justice or the belief of basic justice. So even if you're able to still perpetrate the lie, you can still maintain your empire somewhat. But when your lie gets exposed and called out, no matter how strong you are, you can't do it. That's why, although Germany had a more powerful army than Britain ever did, even in the 19th century, because Germany's empire only lasted for 6 years because it was all about supremacy and destruction, whereas Britain tried to provide justice. So it lasted for a few hundred years, but as the injustice became clear, it eroded. So if you can't bring justice, you can never maintain your order.
And this, even within the U.S., because people are seeing it so blatantly now. Israel, someone said it. Israel is an anachronism. In other words, it's like having a feudal state in the middle of a post-colonial world. We're in a post-colonial world in which China has fought hard to liberate itself. Americans fought hard for racial rights. South Africa, apartheid regime fell apart and everything. And we're now looking at a nation state in Israel, which is carrying out a Nazi genocide and is a settler nation and is using apartheid. So it's the rest of the world is not that they're not going to stand for it, but they're appalled and there's no sentiment. I've seen so many people apologizing for celebrating the bombing of Israel. That goes to show you that shows you what time of day it is. It shows you that they're no longer popular. They're no longer cherished. 20 years ago, Israel was everybody's darling because it was being covered what they were doing, or if you tried to say what they were doing was wrong, they'll call you anti-Semitic. So what we're seeing now is that Israel is the last bastion of this type of bullshit. And even Americans, as racist as Americans are, even the MAGAs and the Americans don't want their name attached to this hideousness that they're doing. So, but we're walking a fine line now because Trump has said with this ceasefire that he's very angry that Israel and Iran stepped over it. And he's now asserting authority. He said, Bibi must stop. And so Bibi said, yeah, I was just getting a last few shots. And of course, Iran, when you call a ceasefire, people would do their last scrambles of shots, like get another punch in.
But it's like the last one before the bell in the boxing.
Yeah, but regardless of whether Bibi is playing Trump or not, Trump's voice is authoritative. He actually said, he wrote in large letters to Netanyahu, stop now. And Netanyahu said, we will honor this now. But if Iran attacks again, we won't. Then Iran said they will honor it. So it's sort of like the thing may get out of control, but at least Trump is one of the first people to actually give an order to Israel, whether they follow it or not. But it just shows you the shift in optics, at least, even if it's only optics. The shift is that he's saying, you guys stop this rubbish. And he's also going back to what his initial MAGA mandate was, where he claims he's trying to bring broader peace in the whole Middle East. When they send that thing to Qatar, people in Qatar saw missiles flying over their country and they weren't happy about it. So Qatar and all these big oil companies, Emirates, they're also putting pressure on America. So what it looks like is there's enough pressure on Trump to keep Netanyahu in line. And then here's the sad part: just let him continue his genocide on the kids in Palestine, but not the Iran thing, because the Iran thing has too many consequences for the world. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, now America is beginning to find out that their governmental system is holding to the Israeli state. The next question is, how do they break that? Because they'd always assumed that the Democrat Party would be the ones to break them. Nobody ever believed that it would be the MAGA half of the Republican right that would actually be the first to say, look, democracy has been compromised and we need to get these people out. They're a foreign lobby. They need to register as a foreign lobby so that they do not interfere in the internal politics of America. That's America's biggest challenge. First of all, recognize that problem and how do they deal with it? Do they deal with it by reforming the two parties, or does a third party emerge? Because for it to work, they have to ostracize APAC from their parties. How do the parties do that?
Yeah,
Do they do that at election time? How do they do that? That's their
I think
problem.
that in general, Americans are going to become less in favor of imperialism because they see that we have economic problems. So I think both parties will now start shifting towards domestic issues, and they'll scale back their military because two great defeats has America suffered. I'm speaking like Yoda or British. Two great defeats has America suffered. Okay, I was just doing like you play football and you're off balance. You don't know how to talk. So I said I'm speaking backwards. Two great defeats has America suffered. First they got their asses whooped in Ukraine with their proxy war. Now we've witnessed Israel get its nose bloodied royally by Iran. Even though Israel may be winning this war or causing more damage, Israel has been absolutely bloodied. That they have to shut down their airspace and they won't let their people leave. So the American people are now going to put their money on what they can win. You know what they say, put your money on what you know will win. They say, oh yeah, we ain't gonna punk other countries. So now let's focus on having the good life right in here. So both parties are going to focus on domestic issues. It doesn't look good. America's economy is a wreck. There's too much corruption and there's not enough social structure, infrastructure for healthcare and things. So I think just out of natural forces of nature, they're going to move away from. I think we might be running into a situation where we see less conflicts around the world only because it's no longer economically feasible. And China's going to win. China's goal has always been to have a global. I'm not saying I'm for it, but there is globalization and capitalistic globalism, which I'm not in favor of either, but it's a lot better than having an imperial model where there's wars. Because even under this global capitalist system, it doesn't solve the problems for people in Nigeria and all these things if we have corruption in our country. And China will benefit because China will have trade deficits with everybody. But at least this is better than war. So China is really invested in having their Silk Road, which has to go through Eurasia. And to get through Eurasia, you have to have Iran stable. And Iran is the last thing of stability. Syria is somewhat stable because even though they got rid of Assad, there's not much fighting going on in Syria. Iraq is still recovering. So moving forward, China and Russia want to make sure all those areas are stable so that they can profit off of a globalization model, which is to their advantage, which once again, it's a lot better than the imperial model. What do you think, Kune?
Yeah. Yes, I agree. The imperial model believes in the usurping of wealth from the global south to the Western countries at their expense. The BRICS model is a commonwealth where everyone feeds off of everyone else and everyone becomes wealthy, just as wealthy and as infrastructured as anyone else. Because if you look at the infrastructures they're trying to put even in Nigeria, although because of the corruption in Nigeria, they're being frustrated, they're trying to develop Nigeria's infrastructure to the level of what they see in China. Because the rail, I'm telling you, the rail that I'm seeing in Nigeria today is better than the underground tubes that I saw in London growing up. They're nicer, they're newer, they're smoother, they're better. They're putting in new technology, sort of like so these movements that China is doing is providing general wealth, is providing equal justice, is providing peace and prosperity for everyone. They do not harp on, oh, it's in China's interest. Oh, it's in China's interest. Oh, China first. Oh, well, and that sort of rhetoric is off-putting for the rest of the world. When you hear the idea that everyone benefits, that's where everybody's going to gravitate towards. And that's what's happening. And that movement cannot be stopped because the Western hegemony does not know how to get out of its supremacy, me first, selfish cycle. It doesn't know how to get out of it because it has to get out of it to even hope to compete with BRICS. And before they can even do that, they have to remove Israel America has to remove Israel because Israel is literally controlling the West. They need to remove Israel from the politics of America, then they can now, and that will make it easy for them to cleanse Western Europe and the West to be more independent.
And in a way, this conflict with Iran was a blessing because if it never happened, we would keep saying, oh, Israel's so powerful. We're so afraid of them. But they got bloodied up. So we see it's possible for Israel. What will happen is, like you said, that country has been programmed. All of them are monsters, but the monster can be put into check with enough force, just like a pit bull. If you slap it in the face enough times and you show them you're the boss, there's nothing they can do. But you have to stay on top of them. Same thing with South Africa. The whites eventually had to give over, and these guys were brutal. The whites were brutal in South Africa, but they had no choice. So what is going to happen is that Israel, by force, they may not be re-educated, but they will be restrained. That was a good one. They will be restrained because they have no choice. Because every single dollar that sustains Israel comes from America, and America, whether or not Trump, at some point, it's over. No country will continue taking its resources and throwing it to another country at its own total collapse. I don't think America wants to totally collapse. I think some of the people in the South who believe the Bible, oh, that's God's country. No, once you believe in the second coming and you believe that if you do anything bad against Israel, you'll say, I don't care if I destroy this world. This world belongs to Caesar. I'm going to be in heaven with Israel and David. Those are the lunatics in America. Same as the lunatics who flew the plane on September 11th, who believe that they're going to die and see virgins. So that extreme religious right in America is dangerous, but it's beginning to fade away because I think Americans are becoming less and less extreme about religion. And and that's good because a lot of people, their support of Israel is blind. They say, oh, they're the children of David. We have to support them. We're not going to talk about that in this show because the Zionists aren't even really the children of David. They're, I did some study on history. A lot of these people that are now Jewish people, they were actually converted through the Zionist movement. They went to Eastern Europe. So people who are not Hebrew, and they were just converted to the religion because they saw this day coming when they would need to send them to the Middle East to control that area. You get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The essential problem with far-right politics is that it always ends in violence and war and a violent end after a period of injustice, both rhetorically speaking and physically speaking. It is incapable of sustaining for a long period of time because of its severe tendencies of bias. And you cannot have openly exposed bias in society and think that you can continue to operate. It's just not possible. No. It's like if you stab me, my hand will flinch. I'm a human being. You cannot just it's just not possible. And that's why this model is going to fail. I think it's a very real possibility that Israel as a state could cease to exist. Because if the infrastructure is not built back, who's going to build it back? Because it was a Palestinian population that was used as a manpower to build all that infrastructure.
So it'll end up like South Africa. It will be a nation with it'll be a one state, and most likely the Arabic part will have a little bit more power than they do. But they'll still have economic power because they'll be so supportive.
There's been a massive exodus of Israelis to Cyprus.
Oh yeah,
Cyprus what if they decide to move to Cyprus and then and the Palestinians move back into Tel Aviv and Israel and take it back?
I see it happen in the next 30 or 40 years, hopefully. Yeah,
it's very possible.
Let's end with that. So just last quick thoughts. Take us out. Yeah.
Okay, so it's been an interesting merry-go-round of politics that we've seen today. We've seen Trump take on the world. He still seems to have come out on top on his foreign policy in the Middle East. He's doing well. He's doing well in the Middle East. He's not doing well everywhere, but he's not doing well at home, not doing well in Russia. He's all there to be, but he's doing well in the Middle East. I will give him that, hands down.
And also he's doing better than Biden did in Russia, because when Biden was in there, we were at stage 4 where we were talking about sending missiles into Russia.
Oh, yes. He's blown Biden out of the water, because even if he's not succeeded in Ukraine, at least the idea of even discussing a ceasefire and peace is being bandied under Trump. I mean, Biden not succeeded, but under Biden, there wasn't even such a discussion. At least the fact that there's even been a discussion, there's an attempt going towards that direction. So overall, he wipes Biden on foreign policy when it comes to foreign intervention and wars and things like that. I assure you that under Trump, under Biden, or under Harris, we would have seen an escalation of war and violence.
Oh, really bad. Really bad.
So you cannot take that. No matter how much you don't like Trump, you have to congratulate him on that. And on that, still the developments are still ongoing. We still don't know. We could be wrong, and we could still see World War III break out.
But I think it's even it continues going on. It's de-escalated a little bit for the
Yes,
at least for the language being used on the news. Where Trump said, "God bless Iran." Can you imagine?
Yes. Whether Trump succeeds or not, he's trying to diffuse.
Yeah.
There was absolutely no attempt by the Democrats at all to diffuse. So
right,
that's
so let's
the
get out of
main.
here. So our next time will be. I'll see you on Thursday. Actually, here we'll take a day off tomorrow.
So we'll bid you adieu. It's been a good show, and we'll see you on the next one.
Adieu. I need some coffee. All right, have a good one.
All right.